everybody. Today we're doing the turn dash block. Let's get to it. Wait a minute. What's so special about the turn dash block? Well, a lot actually. There's a lot of names that go with it. It's not just the turn dash block. It's also Lincoln's platform, monkey wrench, double monkey wrench, a few other names. Hens and chickens, I think. There's a few others. But anyway, what's so special about this one? Well, it's double-sided. It's pink on one side, blue on the other. And this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece are all actually have their own separate piece of batting. The piece under here of batting is all one piece, and this is all one piece. And I'm going to show you how to make it. Now let's get to it. To make the turn dash block, you're going to need, of course, the instructions. And this particular pattern is free, and that's why I'm letting all the sizes and stuff show on this sheet of paper. And this particular block is made different from your normal quilt as you piece blocks, whereas the block has to be made first in the center in the quilt as you piece method. But you also do need to make sure that you have your top and bottom strips done ahead of time. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to put all your half square triangles together, and you can do them in the 2 at a time method, and then you're going to put your B pieces together, but you're only going to do the top and bottom ones. These here all get put together in the quilt as you piece method. So let me get started. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the half square triangles. And I've already got my pieces cut and ready to go, and I already have marked 3 of my blocks. Where did the 4th one go? Right there. Okay, so this is the one that I have to still mark, and my line disappeared, so I'm going to have to go fix that. But what I did is I put a dot of glue, just making sure I've got the right side. Okay, I'm going to put a dot of glue on the center. Grab my ruler here. I like to put a dot of glue down the center, one at each corner and one in the middle. And this, whoops, I want to make sure I'm right side facing. Okay, so I'm going to put a dot of glue here. Just try not to touch your ruler. And then I put a dot of glue here and a dot of glue here. You only need 3 because you're going to be able to pull the dots of glue apart when you go to open up, cut your seams. And you want to make sure that you open these seams in this particular block. Normally I would, in regular quilting, I would press to the dark side. But in quilt as you piece, you open the seams because you want your seams to be as flat as possible, especially when they all come to points and corners and all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and press that so it will stay put. And you don't have to use pins in this method at all. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. I'm sure all of you have done this before. You can use a regular pencil. You can use disappearing ink. I just wouldn't use a Sharpie because, it'll bleed. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that, and that'll fade in a little while. See, like this one already faded, and I did it less than 10 minutes ago. And I have a little wrinkle here, so I'm going to fix that. And see how it's stuck together? I'm just going to press this flat. I'm going to do this one over again. Okay, so that's fixed. So I had this done ahead of time, but I didn't like the way it looked. So I'm doing it again. Again with the glue dots, just little ones. You saw how that stuck together. It was fine. Okay, make sure I have the right side down. Line it up. Press it in place. See, I really don't like to use pins because it can distort the fabric. And using glue has basically changed the way I make quilts. Okay, Okay, so I'm going to draw this line because it already faded. And then I'm going to go to the machine and go ahead and do the 1/4 inch seam on either side of the line. And if you're a quilter, you already know how to do all this. And make sure that when you do your cut out your pieces, make them exact. But you know, you can go a little bigger with the half square triangles and just trim them down at the time of trimming them. You know, to make sure that they're square and the correct size. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, go to the machine and get those stitched. But in the meantime, I also prepared the top and bottom pieces here. You want to put together these 2 pieces and these 2 pieces. You don't want to do these yet. I have just put together this piece, this piece, and this piece, and this piece. But this again is going to be done in Quilt As You Piece, layered, sandwiched. And then I'll show you what to do. Because if you here, I'll give you a little bit of a tip here, or a clarity. Anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to make the top strip the back and the front, and you're going to be sandwiching it with this piece of batting here, and the same with this one down here. And these pieces are all separate batting pieces, so we're not there yet. And these here, I've already glued these 3, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this one. And in order to be able to remember which side is which, I'm keeping them all to my right because I'm right-handed, and in the direction of where they go into the sewing machine. And that way when I get to the machine, they're not all turned around, and I'll make sure I sew the correct side. But of course, you know, with these pieces, it really doesn't matter as long as they're lined up. You can sew on either side. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to the machine and sew these, and I'll be right back. All right, they're all stitched together, and now I'm going to go ahead and show you what I do to open up the seams. I'll show you on this one, and what I'm going to do is going to show you through one each of these, and then I'll fast forward. This is all I do, is I take a seam ripper and I go between the fabrics, and I just take the seam ripper through the glue that is between the fabric. And then I set my seam, open it up, and I press on both sides. And this, for some reason, helps to open it up when you do both sides. And it's really, really important that you open up the seams on these, just so that they will lie flat. And press. Okay, so there's that one. In my picture up here, it would be this piece that I just made, this unit. And that's, you know, when you glue them together, I know that's exactly the right size, so I don't need to do any trimming. And look how even that is. Look how good that is. That's what gluing does. It really makes a difference. So we're going to go ahead and do this one. I'm going to set the seam. Then I'm going to cut it apart. All right, move out of my way. There we go. I'm going to cut this apart on my mark that I made. And doing this sitting down. Yeah, normally I would use my weight, but this is not as crucial because it's you know, in between seams. And if you're off just the tiniest bit, it's actually okay. And then I take this back, and because there is glue in the seam and I know where the glue is, if you put your see, that one's done. It wasn't even there. That's the only drawback with doing this. There we go. And that one's good. No glue there. And then this one, and don't worry, I'm not going to show you on camera at this regular rate of speed. Yeah, see? A little bit right there. Okay, then, again, I do the same thing that I did before. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and clip my corners because I know I can right there. And since I cut these pieces exactly, I know that they're going to be okay. I don't have to trim any more than I just did. And then again, open it up, press on either side. That helps to open things up a little bit so you can grab a hold of them. And as long as you don't use much glue in the seam allowance, they should be able to come apart just fine and open up. So with this particular block, I plan to quilt it after I'm done. I haven't decided on the pattern yet. But whatever I do, it'll be straight line quilting. I might just do a grid or a on-point grid. I haven't decided yet. Okay, so that one's ready to go, and I'm going to fast forward through the next ones that I've got to do. So those are done. The next step is to go ahead and join these pieces and join these pieces. So let me bring my board up here, and I want to make sure I lay them out correctly. So this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, and this one here. Then this one's going to go behind it. This one also. This one. And this one. Then it's time for these. And the way I'm going to handle this one is I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch these together like this, and then this one to this one, and I'm going to do the same thing with the back ones and the same with these, and then we'll tackle this one. But for now I'll go to the sewing machine and start sewing those together, and those strips will be ready to finish this part off. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the machine and get those stitched together. Alright, so they are all stitched together, and as you can see I did chain piecing. I love doing that when I'm able to. And so I'll go ahead and clip these apart. And I did not bother with gluing the seams, even though I could have. I just wanted to get it done faster, and I'm getting confident enough, you know, that I don't always have to. But yeah, they're pretty good actually. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my little pad here away so that we can press all of these open, and they do need to be pressed open. It's important for when the corners meet. So, and because I didn't press them open, I mean, because I didn't glue them, it should be relatively easy to do. In fact, you know what? It might, well, actually, I think I'm just going to press them all to the inside block. That might actually work fine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press these off of camera after I do the first one. Tug on it just a little bit. See, this wants to fall, so that's what I'm going to allow it to do. I think that'll be flat enough. It just makes sense. Because when I go ahead and do the center one, those seams are actually going to fall this way. So they'll automatically nest. So I'm going to do that to all 4 of these strips, and I'll be right back. Alright, so now it's time to pull this back, and what we're going to do here is these are not going to be touched for a while. I'm going to flip this one over, and those two go together, and then these two go together. Okay, so those are ready for when we join them to the center strip. So now we're going to work on the center strip, and we're going to start with the center square. So this time I made the batting too big, but the squares are the exact size they need to be. So in order to make sure that I do this correctly, So that I can line everything up, I'm going to glue one piece to my batting, trim the batting, and then I'll add the second piece of fabric. And I always use a glue stick when I'm doing this part of the quilt as you piece thing. All right, I should not have used this fabric. I think it's printed, but you can barely tell which side is which. And this looks like it's the correct side, or right side, or whatever you want to call it. So put glue all over. And then I'm going to put the batting on it, and it's definitely too big. But as long as I completely cover it, I know it's going to be the right size. So I flip it over. I glue it down, secure it down, and I'm going to go ahead and trim it now before I put my other piece on it. And yes, I'm going to use this straight ruler. And no, I'm not going to use my weight, even though it's sitting right next to me. It's just heavy. 4 pounds. I don't want to always use it. As long as I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to keep it there. And I'm feeling pretty good, so. Which actually has something a little to do with it. If I'm a little tired, I'll use the weight. Okay, so one more little edge. See, this is just another way of getting your batting pieces together with your fabric pieces. See how you can't even see the batting now? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and combine it with the other piece. I'm going to put the glue on there. And this is completely washable glue. That's why I'm using it. It's washable. Do not use the purple washable kind, because after you heat it up, the color will come back. In my experience, actually. I don't know why, but it does happen. So I go ahead and make sure I line this up evenly, because I know that both of the fabric squares were actually cut together, so I know that they're the same size. Okay, then you press it flat. And this is where the quilt as you piece thing actually happens. So I'm going to grab, according to my picture, this one here is 2 and 3, so I'm going to do both of these. And then I'll fast forward the rest of them. Okay, so what you basically do is you're going to glue this piece to here, and this piece gets glued to the other side. Okay, don't need that. This is what you want to use. And I like to do, 3 is really all that's necessary on a span this big. Then you put your piece of fabric on. And the reason why I insist on gluing for at least one side is so that the machine doesn't make it shift. You don't actually have to do it to both sides, but I do for extra insurance, so that way I don't have to rip it out and reposition, which I have actually had to do before I discovered gluing them. Pinning just doesn't work as good. Okay, then this will get used in a moment, and then you're going to glue baste this one on instead of pins. I absolutely do not like pins with this method. All right. Make sure you can't see the fabric underneath. There we go. It should line up precisely. Okay, so what I do next is I'm going to take this to the machine and do my scant 1/4 inch seam right here, and then at the same time, well, once that's done, then I stitch this one. Let's go this way. This is the way I would be oriented on the sewing machine. And then I put this one on, and this piece of batting, it should have been ever so slightly bigger, because the machine will shift it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it forward a little bit so that when I start the stitching, it'll catch and it'll be on a zigzag. When I do stitch this, my stitch length will be at 3.0, but when I do the zigzag, the stitch length is 4.0 and the width is 6.0. On all other types of sewing, my normal sewing, I just let the machine be at its defaults. My machine has a capability of, I hit the number 2 on my machine and it automatically sets me up for 1/4 inch seam allowances, which is amazing. It's a Juki. I love the machine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get that one stitched and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to show you what happens when the machine shifts it. I started sewing up here and see how much it shifted it down? So I actually have to take this out and do it over again, or cut myself a longer strip and do it over and then trim it down, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing. So basically, to take this out, I use my seam ripper. I've had to do this a few times when it shifts too much. So what I'm going to do, just so I don't have to do this again, I'm going to go ahead and cut some more strips, and I'll just use these on other projects. The beauty of this method, the Quilt as You Piece method, is you can use your scraps on other projects or other parts of your quilt that you're making, or your blocks that you're making. So this is not long enough, so I'm going to cut my other pieces longer. It's wide enough. I just make it the same width as this fabric, and there'll be some to trim off when I'm done. So I'm going to go off camera, cut some more strips. I need a total of 3 strips that are longer than my pieces here, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and you'll see them in the next clip. There, that ought to do it. I made them nice and longer. I made them 5 inches instead of the 3 7/8. I just wanted to make sure they were long enough. And this amount that I cut off, believe it or not, it can go into one of my crumb quilts. Yeah, or they can be used for stuffing, so they're not going to go to waste. So the next step on this, after you get the batting on, is to go ahead and glue the fabric down. Okay, and I do this by swiping my glue from the seam to the edge. And if you notice, I put my thumb down on the batting or down here. That's just so, because if I don't do that, it moves on me. So I hold it down. So watch what happens if I only hold it in one place. It works, but it distorts things. That's why I move it down. And I forgot to tug, but it doesn't seem to matter on this particular one because my glue dots were so tiny I didn't need to tug. See, that's another reason to try to keep your glue dots as tiny as possible. Flip it over and do the same thing. Normally I would tug like this, but I'm going to put my glue now. And I forgot to set the seam, but it doesn't seem to matter. All right. And then to get ready for the next seam, believe it or not, because I know that these pieces are correct, I don't believe I made them too wide. Let me double check. They're supposed to be 2 1/8 inches wide. And that's what I cut them to. And because I cut them correctly, I'm not even going to bother trimming this until I am ready to trim this part off, because this will be just part of the batting that's going to be there. So when I put this next piece on, did I do this backwards? I did. I'm going to take it apart off camera. Well, let me show you what happens. Because I glued it down, this is what happens. So it's really stuck there. But I really want it to be correct. So I'm going to take it all apart and do this whole thing over again. And this piece of batting, This, I'm showing you what happens. I'm going to be able to use the fabric, but the batting is trash. So I'm going to take it all apart and do this over again because I really want it to be what it's supposed to be. Boy, it's too bad I didn't catch that. Okay, I'm going to fast forward through this. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing anyway. Okay, so I'm going to do this over again. Put the glue on this side. See, I really wanted you to see that mistake. And I just noticed the mistake. And I'm bound and determined to make this work. It doesn't always, you know, it's not always perfect for me. I do make mistakes. I wanted you to know that and see that. And I'm going to flip this over and press this side just so that I'm not ironing the batting itself. But this will still work. All right, and I'm still going to use the same side that I used before. Okay, pink with pink. That's what I wanted to make sure of. And in order to be able to press this, I'm going to use another piece just so that I'm not pressing on the batting itself. Don't worry, this is not going to stick to it. That just protects the batting. Okay, flip it over. Do the same thing on this side. Get rid of my threads. Boy, I made a mess of this one, didn't I? Okay, so plus I also need to press this side. And again, do my glue dots. It's another reason why not to put a whole bead of glue down the whole stretch. It's just little dots, just to hold it there long enough to sew. And again, I'm using the same side. Blue to blue, very important. And again, I'll use my little makeshift pressing cloth. And you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to stitch on this side of my batting because this is going to get cut off. I'm just going to go ahead and trim it off because of this mistake, but normally I wouldn't. So I'll take it to the machine, do the stitch, and do the zigzag stitch. I'll be right back. All right, so the stitching has all been done, and I'm going to go ahead and, with the exception, I normally don't put the glue stick on the batting, but I'm going to make an exception. Because I've got batting here, there's no reason not to use this because that'll just add to the thickness of the batting that's there. But it's kind of weird, but it does work. And no, I've never made a mistake. Well, I've made mistakes like this before, but I've never fixed them. Let's just put it that way. I never repaired them. I just went with it. Okay, so that side, see, once I'm done with this, you're not going to be able to tell that there was a mistake. So I've left this mistake in to show you what and how you can recover from it. And don't be afraid of this method. It's actually fun. It's fairly easy. And it's just another way of making a quilt. I'm not trying to change the way people make quilts. I'm just trying to add another way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this off because that's really too messy to make it done easily. Okay, and I'm not going to bother quilting until I'm done with the block. But if I were to quilt right now, I'd probably just do straight line quilting at this point. So I'm just cutting. Where's my rotary cutter? Oh, I'll be right back. I'm going to trim just a tiny bit more, even though I don't really have to. I'm being a perfectionist. By the way, I am a Virgo. Anyway, so now it's time to hopefully correctly put the next piece on. What a mistake. All right, so I want to do piece number 3. So that's what I'm doing right now. Flip it over. No, flip it this way. Yikes. All right, so this next one goes right here. 3 teeny tiny dots inside the seam allowance. And then press it good. And you can, when you use the teeny tiny dots, 6 seconds is enough. When you do big dots like I used to, like I did before, 10 seconds. Okay, teeny tiny dots. And then I'm going to put the blue on the blue. Okay. Again. I think I feel the print on this side. Yep. Yeah, sometimes you can feel the print. All right, get over here. So again, what I'm going to do is not use this piece. I'm going to use, see what I mean? I'm going to use this piece. So I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam, and then I'll do the zigzag stitch here. And then when I flip this over, it's going to look awesome. I'll be right back. Okay, so these are, I said okay again. Anyway, they're stitched. I did the zigzag stitch. It looks great. And I flip it out like this. Looks good. That looks really good. Okay, so we're going to flip this back. And we're going to do the glue thing. Open up glue. There we go. And then flip it and heat set it. And I know that the width is correct, so all I have to do is cut the batting off to trim it. I mean, I could have made them a little longer. I could have. Okay, so I got thread caught in my seams. That happens to everybody, I'm sure. All right, so there's that side. And now I'm going to do fast forward for the rest of it. Okay, so yeah, I said okay again. Jeez. Well, anyway, time to trim up and get them ready to be the center strip in my block. This guy needs to go away, and that needs to be covered. And that can be, don't go too far. All right, so the next step here is we're going to trim this up. Duh. Okay. Hopefully it's nice and straight. This time I want to use my weight. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tug that this way, tug that that way. And it looks like ever so tiny bit needs to be trimmed there. See, that just keeps the ruler in place, that weight. It weighs 4 pounds, available on Amazon.com. And I haven't done so yet, but I will make it as one of the products that I use on the Products That I Use page on my website at jpfun.com. So you can go take a look at that list. I've listed my glues. I can't remember everything I've listed. This was a gift from my sister, but I do know that it came from Amazon, so I'll link to this also. I love this. Let's see what the brand is. It's a Fiskars. This one's an Olfa, and I don't remember the brand on this, but it is about 4 pounds. I actually weighed it. I have 2 of them, and one is really close to 4 pounds, and the other one is just under 4 pounds. It's like 3 pounds something, but it's closer to 4 pounds. I'll weigh them again and see how much they weigh at some point. Okay, so these are ready to be joined. I'm really tempted to go and quilt these right now, but I really want to wait until it's all done. All right, so I'm going to pull out my design board. I guess you could call it a portable design board. In case you're wondering what this is, and if you haven't noticed, it matches my glue bottle. This is the tie-dye duct tape. Works really, really well. I didn't want to use any of my good fabric strips on my little design board. I want to save them for making quilts. I mean, I do have a lot of fabric, but I don't want any of it to go onto the design boards. So, and right now this is the only design board I have that's little, that's small. I have a wall one, but no, that does not have duct tape on it. Okay, time to stitch these together. And if I stitch this correctly, this should line right up with it. And it looks like it does. Look at that. And this side too. Yep, my seam allowances looks like they were right on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do, what does the chart say? It says that this is number 12 and this is number 13. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm do the top one first. So grab all this and put this one away and grab my pressing pad, pressing board. What do you think I ought to call it? Okay. So in order to get this done correctly, I'm going to do the top one first, but I need to see it from my vantage point. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it down and stitch it just like I have been doing. But I'm going to, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to do it from my vantage point so I can really see what I'm doing to make sure I line up all of my seams and basically do what I've been doing all along. Now, you know, this whole piece is ready to be put on, just like the individual pieces. This is how you can adapt quilt blocks to the Quilt As You Go method. And the whole point of the Quilt As You Go method is when you want the same pattern on the back side as you do on the front. And also another thing to keep in mind is if you're going to make a conventional quilt where the back side is just a solid piece of fabric and you don't want to take it to a long armor, and you don't want to go through that expense or do that, or if you don't have the means, you could actually have all, the back could be all one piece of fabric, but just cut up into these same little pieces. Or like for this case, if I wanted, just the back to be done of scraps, I would have cut a scrap, I would have cut a piece of fabric, this whole strip wise, for the back side. That would have been okay if I didn't mind the back being different. Like, it's possible to do like a rail fence on the back side and a nice traditional pieced quilt on the front and do it this way. You can do that. It's definitely totally up to you. I'm just trying to show you how you can use up scraps of batting, make the back side the same as the front, and just have a whole new way of making quilts without having to go to a long arm, or if like I said, if you can't afford it. Giving you options. That's what I'm doing. Now I'm gluing it down for a good reason. I don't want my seams to shift on me while I stitch. In fact, I should have added extra glue at my seam, matching points, like here and here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually put extra glue here. See, right on either side of the seam. This one is not a matching seam. That one's not a matching seam. But you still want it to be within reason. Okay. And I don't like to use pins. And the whole point of this is you shouldn't have to use pins. You can use glue instead of pins. You could use clips if that's what you got. That'll work. The glue is so cheap. All right. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video or not, but I've never made a churn dash block before in any way, shape, or form. So this is a first time for me. Even though I've been making sewing and quilting off and on since I was 11 years old. That was 50 years ago. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was 40 years ago. I've been quilting and sewing for 40 years. Yeah. And that's a whole nother story. I'll never forget my mother's sewing machine. I'm not sure. I think it was a white. My sister thinks it was a Singer. But it was, of course, it was electric from the 50s or the 60s. I think from the 60s. Anyway, I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to go ahead and do my stitching as well as this. And I'm going to make sure, I don't want to cut another piece of this, even though I could if I wanted to. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I don't have to. And I'll be right back. All right, this is done. Moment of truth. I did a pretty good job of making it not shift on me. So I'm going to set the seam. I'm getting excited. I haven't looked at the seam yet. I'm hoping it's on. I'm hoping it's accurate and there and where it's supposed to be. And oh boy, looks good there. Oh boy, look at that. I just hope the back side or the other side is just as perfect. Oh, this is so good. Oh, look how good that looks. I'm excited. Oh my goodness. I've never made a churn dash before. Okay. Now let's glue it. I love it. Ooh. Okay, yeah, I'm going a little squirrely. I'm just so excited. This is coming out so good so far. Except for that little bit. All right. It pays to have patience, I guess. All right. All right, all right, all right. Oh, this looks so good. That's so pretty. I love having a high contrast. Even though they're both prints, they're high contrast. One's light, one's dark. It looks so sharp. Okay, let's turn this over and look at the blues. Oh dear. All right, that seam, I'm going to set it anyway. I'm afraid. Okay, let's do the tug thing. I was a little nutso with the glue, I think. All right, that looks incredible. Oh, okay. That worked. All my seams. I love that little feature on my sewing machine that sets me up for 1/4 inch, because it does a scant 1/4 inch, which is so cool. The Juki machine that I have is the HZL FF 300. There are 2 other models in the HZL F series, the 400 and the 600, and the 300 was the least expensive, and it was on sale, and I bought it directly from Juki, their website, simply because I wanted to make sure I got a genuine one that was brand new and not used and sent back to Amazon or something like that. And it's been a good machine, and I'm very happy with my purchase. And no, I'm not affiliated with them at all. And the 1/4 inch foot is the normal foot that comes with it. Actually, I bought a separate 1/4 inch foot, but I haven't used it. There's no need to. There's a little button on that model along with the 400 and the 600 where you just set it to 2 and it sets you up for 1/4 inch seams. It has a larger throat than the brother machine that I have also. That's why I ordered it, because I needed a bigger throat. All right, so this section, I think and this here is a little off, but this looks perfect. So I'm going to do the other side and fast forward. All stitched together, ready for the next step, which is going to be the quilting. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a line of some quilting here, probably a 1/2 inch away from all of these seam lines, and I'll just go like this, and then I'll go around here and around here. Basically, that's, and around here and here. Well, I probably won't go here. Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around all the seam lines and in here, a 1/2 inch away from the seam lines. I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. All right, so it's been quilted, and now I'm going to do my final trim. So I'm going to put this aside, grab this, going to go ahead. I know that I'm going to lose a couple of points here, but I think I'm willing to sacrifice that. All right, so I'm lining up these points here with my 1/4 inch. That's unfortunate. I'm going to lose that though. Okay, I've got that 1/4 inch right there. This one's not going to be quite 1/4 inch. Oh, that stinks. All right. Maybe I just didn't do a big enough seam allowance. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. All right, let's pull this around. I think I'm going to be close though. All right, this is where I'm going to put my weight on it and start cutting. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a stitch all the way around. And then I'm going to show you my scrap bin from this particular block. This is what I'm using for my scraps. And this is all I have from this block. Besides those others that I'm not going to be using in this block, those go into my crumb quilting, which isn't that much. You know, these things. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do my final go round. You're not going to see that. And I wanted to thank you for watching. And I hope you like this new method of quilting. This particular pattern is free. Go to jpfun.com. You can download it. Just look for the okay, what did I call it? I know, Churn dash block. And it is free. You can download this. But if you want all of the blocks, you'll have to become a member. And each pattern or each block pattern is 20,000 points or $1.99 each if you're not a member. And if you register, which is free, or you can pay $95 forever, which is a one-time payment, or $8.95 a month, and you don't have to worry about points. You can just download whenever you want at the gold level when you pay for membership. I might eventually do away with just, you know, make it so that you buy points instead of become a gold member right off. That way you can buy what you want for points. I don't know. I haven't decided that. But for now, it's working. If you want to become a member, go to jpfun.com, look for the membership tab, and go from there. It'll give you your options, and then you become a member and you can download these blocks. There will be 30 when I'm done. Right now, this is block number 11. And right now, 3 of them are free. There will be 6 that will be free total in this particular set of 30, and the rest of them will not be free. And then when I'm done with the quilt itself, the quilt, how it's assembled, will also be available. All right, until next time, thank you for watching and have a great day. Goodbye. There you go. There's the back side.